Hey, Dylan.
Hey, Mike.
Dylan, it is our last podcast of 2011, and it is our last podcast we will kick off, well, won't say forever, but for the meantime, with Sunburn. So, want to end on big thanks to Sunburn for letting us do this. And yes, it's a little bit of letting us do this because if you've listened to the ads, you know they're not normal, they're not standard, and that was kind of
That started out being the plan, and then it just became like the only option.
Well, I think
we're gonna sit down and develop a game and use this more.
It was known. I said up front, it might become a train wreck some weeks, and it might work some other weeks and get out there.
That describes everything we do on the podcast.
It does. But that's the beauty. If you listen to the other stuff, you would listen to the ad, and it wouldn't be a 30-second spot that you just hit fast forward on your Zune or iPod or Windows Phone 7 or whatever you listen to podcasts on, and skip it.
You just have to slow down and like rubberneck and watch. You know.
Yeah, you do. You kind of have to like, how bad do they get off here?
The fire department crews
with that.
In.
So it won't be the last time. As we talk Sunburn, because as we expand that, we'll keep tabs on frameworks and various things. I still want to nail down and get John to come on the show and talk a little what's going on there, what their next plan is. I know right now with the uncertainty or the clarity of Windows 8 and what's going on next and whatever that means, it might be hard for him to talk at the moment, so maybe we just give some time to a point where he can start saying, like, okay, this is, where we're going to go, because these guys make a great little framework. We've checked out several great indie games. I don't mind revealing, since this is the Sunburn spot, that we're putting together an award show, and we're having a best graphics category. I mean, Sunburn games are in that. So, graphics matter. We'll probably talk about that a little bit later on the podcast. Write a game, not a framework. What else have we hit on?
I don't know. I think that pretty much covers
that.
Write a game, not a framework.
Exactly. Don't get hung up in performance problems you don't have. Wait till you have them. So a lot of people start off thinking they need to do every piece of the game so they don't get bit by performance, and they just get worried about, the Xbox only had 512 megs of RAM. If you're, say, working on Skyrim, probably a concern.
Yeah.
If you're doing an indie game and you run into that limit, you're probably doing something dumb. You probably go to the forums and they'll say, like, hey, you're building your audio twice.
And yeah, but 3D is going to be the most complicated part, in theory, of where you're going to.
3D definitely gives you a lot of little rabbit holes you could go down into that you don't need to focus on and just make a good game. So if you want to check out more on the Sunburn framework, check out the guys over at synapsegaming.com. All right, everyone, welcome to the show. As we are changing up the format, we're going with a topical-based show where the topic's going to be developer-focused. We're going to get into it a little later, but just so you know up front, the topic this week we've decided upon, we're going to talk clones. We're going to talk rip-offs and clones and kind of where that is and what does that mean, and as an indie developer, hobbyist developer, what should you take from that? Where should you fall down on that? But before we get into that, I know I've been playing some games recently. I spent some time unwinding over Christmas and the holiday break. We were just talking before the show. Last night, I fired up Dungeon Defenders. First time I'd ever played Dungeon Defenders. My girls had played Dungeon Defenders a little earlier in the day. So there was a 4-pack deal on Steam. It was like $12. And I'd heard people mention this game. And the 4-pack was like $12. Not like the individual game. The 4-pack, This is why I bought Terraria.
A lot of good Steam deals.
They have.
Really
Steam has been something that I almost don't want to open. I almost don't want to open Steam and see what the deals are, because there's going to be something I can't walk away from, So Dungeon Defenders was the one I couldn't walk away from. And the reason I bought Terraria, too, was they had a 4-pack sale. And with Cicely and my 2 older daughters, we got 4 players, you know, and if it's a 4-player co-op, that's great because, you know, my 8-year-old and my 11-year-old, you don't want to go in there and beat them up. Now, I do that in StarCraft because they have to learn. I mean, they do have to learn that, you know, if you're going to play StarCraft with your dad...
Whatever way you want to rationalize it,
yeah.
it's totally cool.
But other games, you know, it's more like, hey, yeah, you can join in and all that. I let them, you know, they can gang up on me. But I do cat and mouse them in StarCraft. I do, like, screw with them. Because I would just, like, out and out roll them because, you know, you'd have the rush and it'd be over in 10 seconds. And this is classic StarCraft. This isn't 2.0, because I didn't buy 2.0 for all the
I imagine StarCraft is more complicated than a lot of, you know, it may be more complicated than what a child their age would really...
Well, but the thing is that they like
Rachel
those games.
likes it.
And
Rachel can comprehend most of it. She's not into the higher stuff, but...
Well, that's what I mean, like, you're still gonna get rolled.
I mean, Hannah, the 8-year-old, plays mostly The Sims 3. So, I mean, she's down deep inside the mechanics of these games. They have very quickly, I guess, you know, and as kids, we were the same way, I think, where the games that were marketed to us for our age were too kid-like. We didn't want to play those games. We wanted to play the older kids' games, always, you know? So, the difference...
Microphone malfunction.
Yeah.
It won't stay up.
Give it the blue pill. So Dungeon Defenders is this... It's kind of like a more tower defense-y version of Team Fortress Classic. But you are all co-op. And when I got home, my daughters had been playing it during the day. We didn't play it the day I bought it because it was like a 1 gig download. And since we moved to Comcast Business Class, I haven't upped the tier we're on. I've been just seeing like how long can we get by on the low tier. So that was like out. Like, 1 gig on each computer. That's out. That's gone. So we just started downloads. I went to work the next day. They played during the day. I came home like, oh, you girls, you know, played it out. They had whole systems figured out. Rachel was talking me through boss battles and where to build things and the points.
They actually started playing co-op with each other?
Yes.
Not with each other, no. But Rachel had gone online and played with other people. They couldn't figure out how to connect. So I went back to my Steam client, got the game loaded up, and realized Hannah had accepted the Steam invite. Rachel had never accepted the Steam Friends invite. So I was figuring, okay, Terraria had its own little system of connecting, but maybe with Dungeon Defenders, if we get the Steam system working, we can at least find each other's games easier, okay? And that'll work out better. So I went over to Rachel's desk thinking she's in the middle of a game, right? And Hannah's in the middle of a game, and I'm thinking, all right, this is going to be just a whole mess of getting them to log out, restart their clients, all of this, to find, you know, all that. So Rachel, go into here. Oh, look, you got these invites that you haven't accepted. These invites are like 4 months old. Okay? She accepted the invites. Okay? And then I thought, all right, now it's not going to update all this shit. This is all she had to do. She accepted the invite. She saw that we were online. She clicked on Hannah in Steam, not in the game, in the Steam client. Clicked on Hannah. Click join game. She was in the middle of fucking Hannah's game right then. Bam. Instantly. There was no restart, no connects, no approval, and voice chat was already fucking working. It was up, it was set up, it was going, it was rocking. I mean, I just sat there in that moment of like, holy shit, like the future, like just happened here, now, like this is the way it's supposed to be.
And then he told me...
Xbox Live is all fucked up. Like, all of a sudden, like, connecting and the whole friend system on Xbox Live and all that is like all bullshit now to me of like this like 11-year-old connect with an 8-year-old and they did it better than I've ever done anywhere online. So if you get to the point I'm like, you know what, fuck online chat. We'll just text, alright? Because I can't get the goddamn Roger Wilco server going. You can't connect. The firewall's not working. Oh, 2 people are behind the same firewall, so it doesn't work. Boom, they're in. I jump in the game. A random third kid joins. And his voice chat's working just fine. He hears all 3 of us behind 1 firewall. I haven't configured at all. In fact, actually behind 2 firewalls because I got a router chain going in the house to cover all the access points. And they're on Wi-Fi. And I'm on LAN. And it doesn't matter. It's just working. It's just fucking working. And it's blowing me away. Like it should not just work like this.
Especially like, you know, consoles have always been kind of like, that's what they're going for, but PC has always been like, man, if you're over here, you gotta know this stuff. But
yeah, like, kind of drop down, find a config file, edit it, copy this line, add, SB exec equals A1357, whatever
Steam is
crap.
Basically trying to do.
And it solidified that we need the Steam console. Like, that needs to happen. This is the way it needs to happen. First, Steam needs to make a UI that you can control entirely with the controller. I can launch the Steam UI, use the controller, select my games, I can read it from my couch while it's running on my TV, and I will build a box to dedicate to the living room to run it. And that's what they need to do. And then, around that, I bet you this cottage industry springs up of, like, Alienware will make Steam boxes. Like, ready to go, plug it to your TV, runs the Steam games.
The danger is you run into something like what happened with Boxy, where they released the PC client, so you didn't have to buy a Boxy box. And then, I think they dropped support for PC, like...
Well, their issue with Boxy is that they're trying to make money off the boxes.
That is true.
Steam's making money through their crazy sales that I couldn't say no to, right? They're making their money. This is all ancillary.
Sell their box for like $20 and be done with it.
I agree, but you still...
They don't need to that's what I'm saying. They don't need to get involved in the manufacture of these boxes. Just make the UI. Or put out an API that allows me to launch this stuff so somebody else can build a UI that you can navigate with the controller and launch your games. If you have that, if you can navigate your friends list and all of that, you can use a controller, people will start, the hardcore will start dedicating boxes and building it. Now, granted, it's going to be like $1,000 rig, dedicated to your television set. Nowhere near the $300 consoles need to be. But I think that would trigger like something like an Alienware, where they start branding, here's the $800, here's the $1,000, just run Steam box, get this, run Steam, it's streamlined just for Steam games.
I think
maybe Valve puts out some spec line statement of like, if your hardware meets these minimum levels, or you run this benchmark tool, then, we'll make sure the Steam games will run at that level, and then they'll have to have like a logo, like they have Steam Powered. Steam Powered basically means runs on Mac and Windows, okay? Yeah. Basically, they'll have a logo that's like, Steam Console or Steam, Simplified or whatever.
Yeah.
And that basically says like, hey, this title will work on the Steam box level specs if that's what you're running on. And then over time, like all of a sudden there'll be so many people out there, that are doing this, then it'll just make financial sense of like, okay guys, we're going to go in the shop here, and we're going to come out with a $300-$400 console option, because all you guys that are running these boxes already, you're built-in sales.
I think the challenge in doing that would be to ensure you don't have fragmentation like what's happening on Android. And there are different things they could do there, but they have to have a little more control.
They're halfway there. I mean, they're vetting the titles, they're curating,
and they're not like Google where they're like kind of built into the open source mindset.
Correct. Yeah, it's all in there, and they have their own API as well. They have a Steam API. They have their own system built in, so it's like integrate with these hooks. So if you integrate with the Steam voice chat, that's covered by the platform. You don't have to worry about
It needs to be something more along the lines of how, bad example, Windows Phone 7 handles hardware. Like you will have these specs.
It definitely does. It's like, hey, but that's the way you start it.
Yeah.
And then you start making a box down the road.
Yeah.
But I mean, they just got. I've not been playing PC games in a while, and to come back to PC gaming and like just watch like an 8-year-old and 11-year-old just like bam in the game done. Like, what do you mean? Like, I have to get out of my game? That's crazy talk. What the hell are you talking about? Like, you can just jump in my game anytime.
Remember back in the old days.
Part of this too is not just Steam. Part of this is Dungeon Defenders. It made some Game of the Year lists.
Yeah. It's
a beautiful game. Like, I mean, they've really thought the user experience, and like, you can change characters in the middle of a game. You can just decide, I've been playing my wizard for a while. Well, I want to play my archer because our team lacks an archer.
And you don't have to restart the whole game.
You just jump in there and you switch out. And, I mean, I was on chat with my girls because they like going in, and Hannah especially, like, rolling different characters. and say like, oh, I'm gonna go in and get my level 0 wizard. And I'm like, we're on the level 5 epic boss. Go back and get your high-level character out. Like, we're not gonna wipe because you decided to go grab your level 0 alt.
Well, I guess that's, and this is
Daddy is not power leveling you.
Another topic for another time, but it's kind of like, that's a decision they have to make in game. Like, do you want to make the player's progress, like, sacrosanct and, you can't switch out another character? No, you can't change the variables.
Yeah.
You have to see how far you can get, or that part doesn't matter. It's
kind of like when we had Adam Sprague on and DLC Quest.
Yeah.
And, like, there's no way to lose DLC Quest.
Exactly.
And he's like, everything you've been raised and taught, that's wrong, Like, you can't. You must punish the player.
There's some games where that makes sense, and there's some games where this doesn't.
And it's stepping back and figuring out, no, wait, what makes sense here? What do I want? We had a freaking blast. It was Cicely who got on, like, the voice chat and was like, it's 10 o'clock, it's bedtime. And I was, like, back on the voice chat, like, there's no school tomorrow, we could stay up late.
I went into one child's room and I was like, I remind the 3 of you that it's past 10 o'clock. And then I left.
Wow.
Like, we haven't even finished the level, We at least need to, like, finish, because the level is divided into, like, waves. It's tower defense.
Right.
So, one level's, one map is divided into waves, and we hadn't finished that map before going on to the next one. It's got RPG elements on it and everything. It's outstanding. It's great. It's an indie game, too, by definition of indie as far as, like, not having publishers and being small teams and things, not an Xbox indie.
Yeah.
I also played a bit of, Dead Space 2, which made Game of the Year lists, higher than I would put it right now, because it's not Dead Space to me. It's not the horror suspense shooter that Dead Space was. It's a very tactical shooter. It's almost a different game. Whereas the first one was the atmosphere, and, it was running down a long corridor with strobe lights going at you, and just knowing something was going to jump the fuck out at you and slash at you, and nothing did. And you were just, like, on the edge of your seat, just, like, shit, nothing has happened in 2 minutes. Like, something really bad's going to happen now, like, why would they wait this long? And the designer's just fucking with you, just cat and mouse, screwing with you the entire game. Just unveiling creepy scenes and as you go in this story. And the second one is really just diving you right in the middle of everything. Nothing's being rolled out. Here it all is at once. Here's all the, basically you're seeing all the types really early. The story's not as engaging. It is a good game though. So I can understand it making the top list. It is a good shooter in this year that has just been, in my opinion, way too many first-person shooters. I'm not a Call of Duty type guy. Like, really, if my first-person shooters need to have something a little bit more beyond just like, hey, we're going to be a military shooter. So, Dead Space, Gears of War, I'm interested in playing. Modern Warfare, Call of Duty, I'm not. Battlefield, I'm not. Those games don't appeal to me. But that's, I'm playing on it. It is getting frustrating in part, too, because it's almost like you have to go in and replay a scenario 7 times to know, like, okay, I gotta run here, stand here, take that guy out, move over here, grab this ammo, reload, then turn around and get here, and get this, oh crap, that guy's gonna spawn from behind me at this point. Alright, so but go here, do here, get this guy, take that out, take this guy out. Now this time, I'm gonna go to the opposite side of the hall, set a mine, run over, and it's like, that's not bad. But that's not what Dead Space was.
It's not scary if you're having.
It's not horror shooting at that point. It's just, it's puzzle game like, in that you just have to know the scene and what's going to come and what works best on what enemy. But
and actually, for me, having to think that much about the tactical aspects of things, kind of ruins the experience for me because I'm then
you're really on mechanics.
Yeah.
You can't really get immersed when you're focusing on mechanics.
Which, is totally cool.
That's
you
not,
have to make the choice.
That's not to not make it a bad game, it just doesn't make it a Dead Space to me. It leaves it at that. Now you played
I've been playing Skyrim.
I'm interested about this because after Elder Scrolls Oblivion, which I bailed 20 minutes into and took it back, or 2 hours into, I think.
Did you
getting out of the dungeon.
sewers?
I got out of the sewer, and King Picard was giving me some advice or some shit, and I'm like, you just look janky as fuck, and none of this was interesting right now. And you're hitting me with this whole, world of shit. You know what? Screw it. I got, my one-day return window to GameStop for picking up a used game, and back you go. And so I took it back. Now, I played it very late. It was like a launch title, and I played it, I think, 3 years after it came out.
Yeah.
So what games looked like that Xbox launch? And it didn't look great then. And then what games looked like at it 3 years later? Going back to this launch title, it looked like shit. And I was just like, there's nothing about Skyrim that interests me because of that, except everybody's giving it their Game of the Year.
Well, okay. It is, in a lot of ways, more of the same. And part of the problem for me is it's been so long. I played it about 2 or 3 years after launch, because maybe 2 years. Or maybe...
You played it before I did.
Yeah, but I didn't get a 360 until maybe a year after it came out. Maybe I can't remember exactly. So it's been so long since I played it. I've kind of forgotten what the experience was like. So I kind of want to retrofit it to being exactly like Skyrim. I mean, I can't. It's hard to look at something in Skyrim and go, "Oh yeah, they changed it," because in my memory, sure, it just always worked that way. That makes sense, once you get used to it. The graphics never really bothered me in Skyrim. And they're, at least the character designs, but I don't really play it. I play it for the environments and the exploration aspect, and so people, it's yeah, okay, whatever. It does look a little better. You don't have to go through the sewers. That was really annoying. The intro here is actually taking you, you're scheduled to be executed by the Imperial Legion, and you get caught in a dragon attack, and somehow, you make it out, and you have to choose to go either with the Imperial Legion or with the Stormcloaks that are rebelling against them. And there's this whole story that involves the nation of Skyrim, and it's very Nordic, it's very Viking-like, and so you kind of have that going. I'm not exactly sure what the real issue is, because like in any Elder Scrolls game, you kind of have to piece together the history and the background. I have to say the escape, that gets you started in this one is a lot better than the dungeon.
Which is kind of your tutorial. It's kind of your orientation or tutorial.
I noticed there wasn't a lot of orientation. Either that or I skipped through it. It wasn't painfully obvious. They've got a new combat system where you, instead of having magic and weapons, you bind one hand to your left trigger and one hand to your right trigger, and so you can either do, 2 different spells, or you can do, 2 different weapons, or weapon and a shield, or magic and a shield. And it takes some time to kind of figure that all out. But, again, I kind of like that aspect. There's some things that it's just really clunky to learn, but I like the fact that it's not just holding your hand all the way through it. Okay, I can figure out what works for me. I don't know, the biggest thing, and this goes back to what you were talking about with Dead Space 2, do the mechanics bring you out of the story? And what I found in a lot of cases is I've run into some really, really exploitable combat scenarios.
And that's a problem with these games, because they have to cater to somebody who's playing this, role-playing type balanced character. I'm gonna put some stats here and some points here.
Well, actually,
but
you don't allocate any points.
I'm going to, I play, alright, I'm gonna take a sword, and everything's gonna go to the sword at the detriment of everything else. And I'm just gonna overpower this one weapon
you actually get skill points as you use a skill. Which is actually, I like it better because usually I would focus on magic using and combat, or like one-hand combat. But, so I couldn't do lockpicking. I was just totally screwed there. I had to look for like a scroll of lockpicking. This way I can do alchemy, I can do lockpicking, I can do all these secondary skills, and I don't really have to allocate points toward them. All I just have to do.
So you could theoretically max on everything if you did everything?
You could.
Or is there like a trophying mechanic, or if you don't use a skill, you lose ability in it?
I don't think there's any sort of mechanic like that. There are ways you can lose skill points, like if you get caught and go to jail or something like that. But anyway, the combat system, at least, like there were cases, I think the enemies tend to scale with you, except the things in the main quest, and the main quest, you can kind of play at your own pace, even though there are times where it's like, hurry, we've got to get to this watchtower to stop this dragon, and I go off and do, like, 3 game days worth of side quests and come back, and, like, they're still
ready.
Yeah.
They're still holding on.
Just give us the word.
But, Encounterscape. I think I ran into an enemy that I couldn't beat at one case. There was this, like, shade or wisp or whatever. And I kept dying. I ended up beating it by getting it trapped between a couple of rocks, where it couldn't attack me, but I could still shoot a bow at it. I had the same thing happen with a couple of mages in this one dungeon, like,
which Bethesda has a reputation for.
Yes. But at the same time, like, it works because I'm not playing the game for the combat. If I was playing the game for the combat, it would be an issue. But what this lets me do, if I can skirt my way out of a combat scenario that should kill me, by some game bug, I don't care. It's like, hey, I would have had to turn around, I would have had to grind. Instead, I got to finish this dungeon.
Right.
I don't care.
So,
Not my fault.
Yeah.
So, from what you've played so far, knowing that I didn't like Oblivion enough to play it, turned off Bright pretty quick.
Yeah.
And I do like Dragon Age. It's really kind of where Dragon Age I thought was really done well. Would you recommend that I need to look at this? Because, I got a long list of stuff to play, but I keep hearing this, like, get Game of the Year.
I'm horribly biased about this. I think if you care about combat, like, combat is rewarding when it works. When it doesn't work, like, you have those moments, and that's gonna be really matter. That's gonna be the thing that really matters, because I think you might focus on that and go, like, well, look at how broken this is, whereas I'm going, like, no, that's okay, I didn't care about that anyway, let me keep... It's very much a detail-oriented game. Dragon Age is a bad comparison, I think, because I don't...
Well, that's why I bring it up, almost as like a opposite end of the spectrum of RPGs, you know?
Opposite, but I think it's more... It's very difficult to say, because the reason I like Skyrim may not be the reason a lot of people would like Skyrim. It's very easy. And what's great about the quest system, and I think the quest system will be the thing that sells you on it or not. There are just tons of quests everywhere. It's kind of like in WoW, except you don't know that they're going to happen.
Right.
But, you'll just pick... I went into the first town, picked up all these quests, played through them all, headed over to the next town, I'm on my way to the next point in the main quest. I just picked up a ton of quests. And the thing is, like, the paths you take will take you through other areas, so you can kind of branch out and explore.
That's the other thing, too, because seeing the sheer volume of content and quests in this game, it's like, I don't even know if I want to start on that. Because Dragon Age, I completed absolutely everything that could be done. I don't feel like that is a realistic goal that you could have in
It is
Skyrim.
not.
And therefore, I may not enjoy this game because it's going to feel like, well, it's like Fallout. Again, a Bethesda game. I did not like Fallout for that. You know, it was like, well, I just got to randomly wander out here. Maybe there's some other, oh, look, I got 20 more quests from wandering out here to do. And then, you know, after a while, I just kind of lost interest in the game because my quest log is like, I'm never going to work this down.
Achievement whore. Like, if you focus on the achievements and not everything there is to do in the game, you'll probably be good.
Like, oh, so like the achievements are guiding you through like, hey, this is the stuff you kind of should see to feel like you've completed the game.
Yeah. Buy a house, join the companions, join the Thieves Guild, join
so
the
there's no like, complete the game, find every feather on top of a rooster.
No, there
hunt
is. You get
achievement.
You get achievements for going through the main quest line, but then most of the other quest lines, or most of the other achievements, are for getting to the end of each chain of side quests.
But I mean, there's no achievement basically that's a bunch of bullshit of, find the pot in every town, you know, or smash every pot you see, or open every, you know, any of that kind of
I don't think so.
crap.
I don't remember offhand. But I don't think
you know, just mindless, repetitive, stupid tasks.
Has anybody found a Final Fantasy XII? Oh, you shouldn't have opened that box that you first came to because if you don't open it, then 30 hours later, it's the ultimate weapon.
I don't think so. I haven't run. I'm sure there are things like that.
I think Fable is an example of some of these bad achievements. It had like all the find the stupid gargoyles, or shoot all the gargoyles with an arrow.
There may be one or two. I don't.
Assassin's
I
Creed.
don't remember that being an issue.
Assassin's Creed wasn't too bad.
Find every goddamn feather.
Because you could kind of take it, like you knew you were going for the achievement, so you could kind of take it region by region, and you were never backtracking. See, in an RPG, you're going to backtrack, and that makes it worse.
Well, the nice thing is it's got a fast travel system, so once you've visited somewhere...
Right, but what I mean, like in Assassin's Creed, you're going to visit the area once, and at that level, you can go everywhere in the area that you're meant to, and so you can get every feather. But in an RPG, it's like, well, you're not able to get over here yet, so you can't actually finish getting all the feathers here until you come back at level 30.
There were some feathers you could not get to when you first got to them.
It may lend itself to multiple replayings, because I'm assuming, like, you can't be in the Companions, and the Bard's College, and the Mage's College, and the Thieves Guild, and the Dark Brotherhood with the same character.
So it's a multiple playthrough type.
Yeah.
Or at least a judicious management of save games.
Yes. And
Although, is there enough specialized content for your character class and type that it makes it worth replaying? Because that was one thing I loved about Dragon Age, was it really, you know, had like some very set storylines that only occurred based on certain classes.
Class is very loose in this one. I don't remember, like, you choose your race and that kind of sets your initial abilities. It does away with the, like, earlier games you had to choose what astrological sign you were born under. Well, I mean, it's got its own set of signs. Tamriel is... Which
always, I felt like it's such a pointless bullshit thing, because you don't understand what that impacts when you're starting a game.
Well, yeah. And the only decision like that I'm not certain of are, you know, race obviously is what it is, but there's a choice when you're escaping the town to go with the Imperial soldier or the Stormcloak, you know, like the guy who escapes with you. I don't know how that's going to play out later on. But as far as the choices you have to make early on, like astrological sign, you now have to go out into the world and find different stones. When you get to the stone, you can take, you know, the effects you would get from that sign, but you can change it up at any given time. And then skills level up as you use them, and then you get perks. You get perks every level. You level up every time you get so many skill increases. So it's very loose in terms of class. Now, obviously, a character that is more skill-oriented is going to go, like, Thieves, or, not skill-oriented, but, like, stealth-oriented. Thieves Guild, I assume the Dark Brotherhood. I've never played that quest line, but it's kind of the evil side of things. If you're more magic-oriented, you're going to do, like, the Mages Guild, or I would assume the Bard's College. Or, there's the Companions, which is like the Mercenary Guild. Again, it's more how you choose to play your character versus how you choose to build your character.
All right. Anything from chat?
Not really. They had been wanting you to get back on topic.
It's a game podcast. What the fuck are we off topic on?
We're on.
Can you talk about my robe some more?
For developers, GameMarx for developers about Skyrim.
More of you game developers probably should play more games, good ones, and then use that back in your own games.
I'm going to point this out, though. Yeah, I've actually made a lot of notes about Skyrim, like, not so much about the game itself, but, like, why I respond to certain things, like the thing I was saying about combat versus exploration.
Well, and I think Dead Space will be something when we come back to a UI talk of an interface, because, I mean, there's no user interface, there's no HUD, there's no static, like, this is, it's all woven into context, and there's a lot that can be taken from that, because, you don't pull your eyes away from what's relevant happening at the moment. You have everything beside you. In fact, Captain Dubstep, I'm kind of taking some cues from Dead Space and how thinking on, like, where I'll reveal, like, power meters for the guns and how these things will show out. So that you're not, like, looking up in the top left corner for, like, how many lives do I have left, or what's my power meter, or how much ammo do I need, and that kind of thing.
To die?
We'll answer the comment in chat about Skyrim has a drug market. Yes, it's called skooma.
Skooma?
And I think moon sugar is the other thing.
All right, well, let's get into some of our stories this week. The one big story, well, I got a little story here first. And that is, the guys behind Uzi at iZombie, they got a blog post up that Microsoft, killed our release. And it just basically goes through the dashboard freeze. Our game appears at number 4 or 5 on the list. The top downloads had also frozen. So, and then when they unfroze, they only took 1 day's worth of data instead of 4 days worth of data, and iZombie gone off the list because the list unfroze and they're pushed down fast and gone, and it was a blip. And the post basically ends with we're unitying it up. I mean, and again, this is not
uncommon.
A hack in the basement. I mean, if you played Uzi and some of the other games by this developer, iZombie made some Game of the Year lists, was put on there.
It's a team of developers.
This is why we can't have nice things. This is why we can't have good developers on the service, It's so broken, like, the guys that can make it better by releasing quality games, they can go elsewhere. And,
they will go elsewhere.
One burning like that of, like, I think they said 2 months. I think that's pretty good for iZombie. They spent 2 months on iZombie. I mean, and it's 2 months gone, but that's not like a horrible 6-month tale.
In theory, you can release that on other services.
Yeah, that's basically what they'll be doing, porting everything over to Unity and going.
Hey, screw you guys, I'm going home.
Let's see. So, speaking of top lists, now let's start off with what kind of kicked this off, which is the Microsoft Best Indie Games of 2011. So the Best Indie Games, according to Microsoft, version 1, College Lacrosse, College Lacrosse, Total Minor Forge, Rainbow Islands TA, which I think is Total Adventure. Okay. It's not an indie game. It's an arcade game released in 2009. So an arcade game from 2009 was on the list. This is how well they pay attention to what the hell's going on.
I'm assuming the
release date
are technically indie.
The release date is it's their top Xbox Live Indie Games list, and they're Microsoft.com. There's no technical bullshit anything. It's an arcade release. The banner says arcade. The page says release 2009. They didn't even proofread the list. Nobody proofread the list. This is glaringly obvious.
I didn't know because I think they just said independent. Like it wasn't. They could probably get away with, it's not XBLIG. It's
No, it is indie games. That is Microsoft branded. No.
Right.
Castle Miner, Techno Kitten Adventure, Flight Adventure 2, Castle Miner Z, Fortress Craft Chapter 1, NLL 11, and Avatar Legends. Now,
I love that it included lacrosse games when that was like the big enemy.
That was the whole rating scandal in there. You got all
like the bad guy.
All Minecraft clones are in the top lists. Now they replaced Rainbow Island Adventures, with, Avatar Adventures Online. Okay? Which I believe Avatar Adventures Online was always on the dashboard promotion. This might have just been a web fuck up. And they didn't there.
I only saw the web list, so.
It's basically been put out that, hey, these are just the best sellers. So their top 2011 was just best selling. We didn't do like best games. We were just lazy to best selling. I actually think it might be based on time played. Because I have a hard time believing Avatar Adventures Online and Avatar Legends and Techno Kitten Adventure and stuff like that dominate in the selling. Like all of those.
Yeah.
It seems like, I don't know.
Wait a minute, hold on.
Going back and saying the games by playtime, all of these games are a serious effort, except for the Techno Kitten Adventure. Okay? All of these games you're not going to play for in less than hour spurts, right? Avatar Adventures Online is an MMORPG. Avatar Legends is a role-playing game. You're going to play that for a ton. All the Fortress Craft clones, you played those for... So if you bought those, you would play those a bunch. So I think... And again, this is just lazy. The lazy sort was go in the database for people who bought the game, sort by most time played, pick the top 10, and post it. The only one that doesn't fit that is Techno Kitten Adventure.
I have a hard time imagining that although I guess it's a function of if a game gets enough sales, then it's naturally going to have higher playtime.
Well, I'm talking about average playtime per person buying it, right? Not like total playtime. I think if you take of the people who bought it, what's the average playtime per person? All of these games would be higher because you would not just sit down for a quick session on these games, except for Techno Kitten Adventure.
That scares me. And I'm wondering why the media has been covering up the epidemic of epilepsy that spawns from.
Maybe that's it. Maybe people have launched Techno Kitten Adventures. You launch Techno Kitten Adventures. You have an epileptic fit, and then it takes like an hour or two for somebody to find you, but the game is running. Right? So you technically played the game for 2 hours, even though for an hour and 50 minutes you were
either that or,
praying not to swallow your tongue on the floor.
It makes you go temporarily insane just because, you have to make sanity checks every 5 minutes.
Maybe it's Hypnotoad somewhere in there.
It could have been a blend. It could have been a blend of sales charts, but it definitely has the feel of, we didn't go through and pick what we felt were quantity. We didn't go through by rating. These are the top rated games.
The fact that there are 2 lacrosse games and, Castle Miner and Castle Miner Z just seems like... Yeah, it kind of, they're not trying to make variety.
It's reflective of the level of attention and care Microsoft gives the service. The service is done. It's over now. Accept it. Either acknowledge it while you're still here, that it's dead, but I still want to put out my Captain Dubstep on it.
You're here for the fun. You're not here
exactly.
For the
or move on to another platform. Don't try to put some effort into, hey, if we just got a Twitter campaign together, it would all change. By golly gee Whittakers, No, that ship has sailed. I think the last dashboard update was the last moment that anything that would have changed, it would have come then.
Yeah, especially after the previous dashboard update launching this whole campaign. Anyway, the world is horrible, and, you have to accept that.
So we have, I did tag some other Game of the Year lists, because they are interesting. So, Destructoid, their top 2011 games are TEC 3001, Cute Things Dying Violently, Australia, The Scapegoat, Blocks That Matter, Sequence, Volchaos, Hidden in Plain Sight, Wizorb, iZombie, and that rounds out their list.
Steg says it's not Destructoid, it's Destructoid Community Blog.
Oh, is that some guy's blog? The game journalism, I don't know what's a blog, what's a collection of blogs, and what's a site anymore. It all, like, am I reading your site? Am I reading your free blogging service?
I go into this website, I type in a bunch of words, it's an article. I go into this other website, I type in a bunch of words,
yeah,
it's a blog.
it's crazy. I can get behind that list, though.
Yeah.
That's a list I can endorse. That's not going to be my list, but yes. I would not discredit any of them on there.
We'll get into this a little bit later, but I think that's kind of the way with indie games.
Meaning?
There are very few, games that you can point to and say, like, that is it. That is the game that is going to be on everyone's list. And that's okay.
So, the next list that I tagged here, G4 did, top Xbox indie games of 2011.
I have not seen this one.
G4, I don't check it off. I need to check it out more often. They're actually quite receptive to Xbox Live indie games. There's been quite a bit of coverage for a site as mainstream as them. They definitely check it out more than others. So, there starts out with Blocks That Matter, Dead Pixels, excellent game there, Solar 2, this would show up in a couple other places. I don't get this game, but I see it in a lot of places. Like, it's a well-loved game, I don't get.
I didn't play Solar 2, I just played the trial of Solar 2, but having reviewed Solar 1, it's very much an outside-the-box sort of game. So I think that may be it.
Sequence, Laser Cat, that was a early from the year one. And then their honorable mentions, Antipole, Cursed Loot, Bloody Checkers. So that's a surprising pick, Bloody Checkers. Yeah. Because it didn't have like a graphical polish. So you don't expect it to gain mainstream attention.
It had 3D.
But it shows it shows that they're like checking out the games for more than just like, oh, it needs to look nice.
Yeah. It's kind of like a Quake level.
The Scapegoat and Radiant Games Ballistic, another game from the beginning of the year. What I really like about G4's list is they're going back to the beginning of the year. Like, they sat down, they knew the games that came out this year, and could go back and put thought into a list. Need to definitely follow G4 TV more. Lot of respect for their list. I have a DIY gamer list. I don't know if that's a blog or that's a site or that's a forum post. I don't know what the hell it is. Best 2011 indie of the year. Now, these aren't all Xbox Live indie games. So, these are just what they called indie. What made their list that I recognized is Cursed Loot. You may know it as Epic Dungeon. And I thought there was one more that hit their list. I saw. I may be wrong. Trauma, Prime, Bastion. Nope, DLC Quest. DLC Quest also made their list, which is pretty good because their list was all indie games, all platforms. And, Bastion is on there, so they're doing XBLA too, and so for their game of the year was The Binding of Isaac, and if I had not played Dungeon Defenders, I would agree with that one, but after playing Dungeon Defenders and playing Binding of Isaac, it's close call, I would go with Dungeon Defenders, though.
Joystick actually did a holiday guide before Christmas came out, and Wizorb was on it.
Yeah, I did see that. It wasn't a top of, it was a holiday buying guide.
Yeah, they haven't done their top whatevers yet, but for that to be on there with all the rest of them, they're like, I know technically it's an indie game, but you still should buy it.
VVG TV. So, indie site, but they cover more than indie games. Infinity Danger. I'm playing this one from early in the year. Crazy boss fights. That's the game. Another nod for Dead Pixels. Crimson Alliance isn't, Skydrift isn't, Minecraft isn't, Sonic. Dungeon Defenders. They like that one. TEC 3001. That made their list. At number 3. Again, this is a mixed list, so seeing Xbox Live indie games show up there. Now, they do dedicate their coverage a lot, and they do cover a lot of indie games, but that's just kind of the run around as far as what other sites have reported. Now, we, of course, we did our big giveaway this week, and I forgot the winner. Does anybody remember the winner's tag?
I don't remember. I probably have the email on my phone. But I don't know which one was which.
The mega pack.
I just saw the answers come in.
Giveaway. You won the mega end pack.
Just give me the gamer tag. Alright, so you're failing over there.
Gamer tag, Max Shrek.
Job is to do
Max Shrek.
Do the computer, man the chat.
I am there now!
I know, and so am I. I got it. Yeah, Max Shrek.
I said it first.
And I pulled up his profile. He's got like 40,000 gamer points, his gamer score. So the mega pack went to a good home. If you go to giveaway.gamemarx.com, they're up there, the winners. Not Max Shrek, because I was going to save that to, announce that one on the show. But that went really well. I got some survey results for that we'll show here, in a second on the show. But that took up most for this week. We are waiting for the year to end before we put out our year list, just to, cut it off calendar year to calendar year. So we actually have like a day left of releases that you can get in. We are done for new releases of the week. We aren't doing any more new releases of the week. We aren't covering games in that method. We do have an idea for a replacement of game videos during the week, but we're gonna let some other things settle in before we spin that up. And also, this week, we settled on 15 categories, counting Game of the Year. So we have 15 GameMarx awards, to give out. Now, all we did was decide upon our nominations. We are going to go away this week from each other and figure out where we replay these games, figure out which ones are most deserving of the awards, come back, and that will be next week's podcast. So next week's podcast will be nothing but deliberations on Game of the Year awards.
Bring in the noise.
And it's important, I think, to record the deliberations, because you can go to the list and you can see the list or who won the award, but that's really a third of the story, maybe even a quarter, like the deliberations, it's we have to come to consensus on those.
Yeah.
So there's going to be some games, like, let's say a JRPG,
yes,
that I'm not going to endorse for Game of the Year. It's not going to be Game of the Year. So it may be your Game of the Year, it's not going to be my Game of the Year, and we're going to have to compromise.
Well, we're also going to be doing top 10 lists.
We are also going to do a personal top 10 list each. So we're doing that without seeing each other, so we're all off in our corner, coming up with our own personal top 10, which will then feed the Game of the Year and probably runners-up, based on what our top 10 lists were. What we're not doing genre-based awards. So I thought of doing that, but then it gets really crazy. We had 14 categories without getting into genres.
Yeah. And some genres have very, very low representation on the service.
Right, yeah, and then we'd be just trying to pad it out, and genres aren't well defined anyway.
If you're looking for those type of lists, just look at the personal top 10 lists, and you'll probably get
exactly. That's the personal top 10 list. Anything that was in a genre that we wanted to call out and feature, it'll get covered in our top 10.
The other awards are more for fun.
Not all of them. Some are serious.
But some of them are.
The majority of them.
No stags. We're not catering directly to you.
We have some stag
worthy games, but
well, no, we have some stag. We have category. Stags is in some categories.
Yes, he is. He's in at least one.
Yes, but he's naming specific categories that only he would get into.
Best baby launcher. Wow.
You know what? I toyed around with best Stegs categories, but then I thought if we did a best Stegs category, we have to do a best Silver Dollars category.
Always.
And I was like, I can't.
Well, I actually thought we could do like the best real game category and like the best not actually a game category. Because they have both.
Yeah, so that's going to be next week. We're going to have a lot of this next week, and that'll be our this week. So the game contest wrapped up, and with that was a survey. And of course, in the survey it was very clear that hey, for entering the contest, you filled the survey. The survey results will be public. I'll put this weekend. I'll get these charts and I'll get the data up.
I have not actually looked at them. You just put them up like right before I left.
I don't think there's like any earth-shattering knowledge here. I also think you have to look at the data and accept bias. So I think there's 170-something results. I went in and blew out anybody I thought wasn't real accounts. We didn't get many of them, but we did get a handful of, okay, 0 is not an Xbox Live gamer tag.
I did see someone who put none.
You also filled in no question with any legit answer, like they wrote in none and everything. So I pulled them out of the survey results. Yeah, I didn't pull them out for the contest eligibility, but I did pull them out for the survey results. There were some that, it's like, it was obvious they went and created a gamer tag just then. They went to Xbox.com and made them when I pulled up some gamer tags and things. Cause I didn't know you could have spaces in gamer tags.
I didn't either.
I found out a lot of things going down. I'm like, oh, that is a gamer tag. That's a real gamer tag. Okay. So, I mean, all the personal identifying data has been gone, and the data has been scrubbed. I went through in all the type-in comments. I did scrub anything I thought might lead back to a guess of who might have wrote that, just to try to double anonymize everything. But I wanted to leave it linked together. I didn't want to take the questions and, like, you could look at them independently, because sometimes you just need to read a line all the way across to get where this person is at, to understand this comment, you need to read the comment left in the other box. So, I wanted to leave it together, so I did some extra scrubbing on that. Unfortunately, I did not realize that MailChimp, which is what back-end powered the registration, it basically was an email list service with MailChimp, but in MailChimp you can create a sign-up form that can be anything you want, and it can be required, so I made the form the survey. And that way I got the information. MailChimp stamps the IP address, they stamp all kinds of time, they force everybody to double opt-in. So, I mean, it's really highly vetted. We got no spam entries. And we got half the traffic from the site came from giveaway sites, sweepstakes sites, like sites that just like, sweepstakes of the week or giveaways or coupons.com.
Somebody's advertising sweepstakes.
Yeah.
Oh, join it now. I
have a vision of grandmothers, like, just monitoring these sites to clip coupons, calling over their grandson, like, Johnny, come over here. Look over here on your Xboxes. They're giving away your internet's games. You can sign up. What's a gamer tag? I can't fill it out. Can you type that in? I have that might have been a high number. That might actually happen just based on the amount of traffic, that came from these kind of sites. But no spam. So MailChimp, highly recommended. They kept it filtered. There were obviously people who just like, alright, I'm gonna enter everything, anything. And like I said, I pulled them out of the survey results, but not the contest eligibility. I Because like I said, some people went in and made an account, and I'm not drawing the line there. It's whatever. But I'm pretty certain everybody at one, they at least had a live account that when I went and I checked the winner and pulled it up, use random.org to select the winner. Random.org has a true number generator or something. I don't know. I didn't look into it. Punch in the box, punch in the numbers, make a random number between this and this. There we go. Official source right there. Wrote it down. So let's get into the numbers now.
Actually, I watched the emails. I couldn't keep up with them like last weekend. But
well, so reading the emails you would get, because we got like over 170 responses. You can no longer have a feel for the numbers at that point.
Right.
You know, because it felt like when we started, achievements weren't that important.
Well, actually, I saw those.
I saw them coming in, but I saw a lot of them I was reading were not putting that down. Well, over time, it became important.
The thing I noticed, and I don't know if the numbers will bear this out, it seemed like people, like at least the early people, had a quick answer for like what their favorite 360 game was, but for indie game, not necessarily. Even if they said that.
No, that was definitely pretty even down the board.
Really?
Yeah. There was a lot of people that, like, one dude started off with, like, my list in alphabetical order. And unfortunately, like, in the middle of the C's, like, MailChimp cut off. So that's unfortunate, because a lot of people were writing some really good comments in there.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate MailChimp did that, and I don't really, it's a lesson learned. I don't really have a way to go back and capture that data. I wish MailChimp would have thrown an error or something and let it, hey, it's not working. And I could have jumped on and fixed it, but... Yeah.
But even the list that I saw coming through email didn't seem like they were, like... They'd name all kinds of crazy games that I didn't even remember. So, it's kind of all over the board, I think, people's favorite game.
Alright, getting into the numbers.
Yeah, that was like my one comment that I actually know.
The first question that we had, have you purchased an Xbox Live indie game before? About 95 people said yes, and about 75 people said no. All the bar graphs are actual numbers, and they're all bar graphs, okay? Just don't fucking do pie charts, guys. Pie charts are the fucking Comic Sans of the charting world. It's a shit way to show data. Alright, so the next question is, now I took out the people who had not bought any, because obviously that's 0 on this chart. How many games have you purchased? The first bar is a little over 60 people have bought 1 to 9 games. And then it drops off pretty quick of 10 to 19 games, 20 to 50 games, 50. And a couple of people put in like 100. One person put in 160. That's possible. I had deleted who had made the answers at that time. I mean, we had some developers fill out the survey. Not as many as I expected went in and entered the survey, but that would probably be some of the developers that were at the higher end. So the bulk, I was surprised at the number of people who had purchased the game, though. I was surprised it was more than half. Then again, the selection bias.
Yeah.
Most of our advertisement was done to our audience and on indie game sites. No major news sites picked up and ran with the story. So, I think it was good that we were picked up on the sweepstakes sites, because that kind of counterbalanced some of that a little bit, but it would have been nice to get a larger game site just say like, hey, but you know, I guess we didn't meet the stringent criteria of a Joystick or Kotaku. The next, how often do you visit the Xbox Live indie game section? Now, the first column is daily, coming in about 25, 23 or so. Then weekly and monthly are all both up 35, 40, basically on there. And then rarely and never were the last two, options. So those still took a chunk. But I think this one, there were more people who said they were checking out the service at a regular interval than I expected. Yeah. I expected a lot of it to be like, I rarely ever go in there. I've bought a couple, but, you know, I don't check it that often.
There were some, and I'm just speculating here. There were some instances in the emails where I saw people got confused got XBLA, indie developers on XBLA and XBLIG confused. And there was even one person who got Xbox Live and Xbox Live Indie Games confused.
Yeah, so, that happened quite a bit, especially some arcade-type indie games would get mentioned.
And like I said, I have questions, and I'd have to go back and look at the numbers to see how much this is the case.
All right, so here's the first interesting chart. What feature, I think the question was, what feature would you like added? What is the biggest feature missing from Xbox Live Indie Games? The giant bar there, over 100 is achievements. Tiny little beacons, cloud saves. Second down there, a little over 20, friends recent played list. I'm going to guess that's a lot of developers thinking they want their games marketed more. And by seeing on the recent list, that would be there. And then leaderboards down there. But I don't know that that's a surprise, other than the amount of non-developers in the survey. It's still achievements. We want achievements. If you do one thing, figure out a system similar to or working inside of achievements. We're at that. Now, what drives you most to buy an indie game? Here's where I believe people start lying on a survey, because they want to lie to be the person they want to be, not the person they are. Okay? So, box art is almost off the chart. It's almost like 0. Might as well be 0. Screenshots do account for quite a bit. They're up there at 30. But I gotta say, box art probably counts for a crap ton.
Just the number of games that are on the service.
To try it. To download and try it. The two top ones were friend recommendations and internet reviews, which I agree with Stegs in the chat. That's all bullshit. Nobody reads reviews and bases that off of whether to try indie games. Nobody reads reviews to try indie games. Yeah. To try games. Reviews don't drive sales in games. Most people read reviews after they bought the game. Like to justify their purchase. And then they argue with the reviewer because they bought the game and the reviewer didn't agree with them.
Yeah. Friend recommendations, I would think it's probably a little bit inflated, but I'm sure that accounts for things like, I made a game with zombies. The things that go viral.
Steg says that it's box art. Get those tits on there. And I think this is where people they don't want to admit hey, there was a hot chick on the cover, so I checked out this game.
Well, but even there are some games you can just look at the box art and that looks polished, that doesn't. And most of the time, some of the time that bears out, but there are a lot of games that don't necessarily have great catching box art that.
Yeah, they're mentioning the thing about on the missing from Xbox Live Indie Games Connect support. I completely forgot that Xbox Live Indie Games can't connect this Connect support. Because I don't give a fuck about Connect. It's motion control.
No.
Been there, done that, not interested, done.
I'm wondering how.
So it's not even in my conscious way to even put on the survey. That's my own bias. I left that as an option off.
With the distribution, heavily favoring achievements, it still probably wouldn't have changed much.
Next survey question: what is most important to you in an indie game? Now, this is probably a half lie. This is not a full-on, I'm not going to admit that I buy the box art for tits, but it's somebody no, I buy games. The top two are creativity and gameplay. And game length, graphics, music and sound, and story got almost no votes. So I think there's a lot too of
quantifiable.
Well, it's I don't want to admit that I buy games because they look pretty. This game looked nice, and that's why I like it. That graphics. You want to say it's the creativity and things like that. But on the flip side, I think there's a lot of truth to creativity and gameplay sell the games.
Yeah.
I think that's your conversion rates. I think when they get the game and they get past the tits on the box art and everything, and they launch it up, what gets them to buy it and convert it from a trial is the creativity and the gameplay.
Is it something different?
And the graphics. I think the graphics are almost an equal third on there. But, this is kind of the fun. The survey wasn't have a definitive answer on these questions. It was hey, if we're going to do this giveaway, Let's go ahead and tack the survey on there and just see what the numbers come out. It'll be a good discussion point. Last question that I put on there. What do you think of the new Xbox dashboard?
I'm interested to see this because this seemed like it was all over the board.
And it wasn't as all over the board as I thought, and it wasn't as negative as the press seems to be running with it. So the first two bars here, the small one is hated. The second one is it's worse than before. Third bar is, man, I'm indifferent. It's whatever. It's a dashboard. I don't care. And then it's better. And then there's I love it. So if you kind of look at like from indifference and up, like it's not negative. It's like it's either people are like, it's a new dashboard, whatever, or I like it. A lot more people are okay with or liking the dashboard than have issues with it, which is not the stories running in the press right now. The stories is how they've screwed it, and it's awful, and it's bad.
Well, even our complaints, I think, are coming from kind of a design standpoint, like an objective standpoint. I think, again, speculation, but I think the key for most people is, are the things that I care about easier to access or harder to access? For some people, the things that they care about are easier to access or the same. Some they're harder, so...
Yeah.
I mean, that really determines it. Then most people don't care as long as they can get to their stuff.
So, with all of that, our topic for discussion, clones. Because 4 clones on the top Xbox Live indie games. All Minecraft clones. And they are clones. I mean, that's not gonna give them an excuse, and not gonna play the stupid game of, but Notch took this, bullshit. Bullshit. Notch made this a fucking game that people had heard of and people were dying to play off of, and because it was this level editor and this other thing that he got inspired by, that doesn't take away that you're not a clone. But there is levels of cloning, okay? And there is blatant ripoffs down to, I'll not use an indie game example. I'll use a AAA title example. Maxplosion. I don't know if you saw this from Capcom.
No, I have not.
It is Explosion Man. Explosion Man. Straight up. It looks like him, plays like him. It's even worse. Like him. What's even worse is they pitched the game idea to Capcom and they turned it down.
Wow. But then it did well. And
Capcom claims like, you pitched it to this division, which doesn't talk to the division that actually did it, or some bullshit of like trying to back out of that. But it's blatant ripoffs. It's the art style, it's the, all the mechanics, the levels, the design, the elements. It's, this has happened on the indie service as well. But that's the lowest of the low. Okay, that is truly the worst kind of thing that you can do. And it's lawsuit territory. It is at that point, you can't copyright the rules to the game.
But you can, the look of the game
But art assets, sound assets, design, aesthetic, these are all trademarkable and copyrightable. And so, there's that level. And that's despicable. I mean, there's no redeeming quality about that. It doesn't do anything for anyone, and it's a process that just needs to die. And it needs to be called out when it happens, and, it needs to be called out in the gaming press, it needs to be called out by the gamers. These are the ones, not because Modern Warfare 4 was too much like Modern Warfare 3. You need to go bomb Maxplosion on Metacritic. Yes. You need to crater that and send a clear message like, this is crap and shouldn't be on there. Now, above that, stepping a step up the ladder to morality, or whatever's at the high end of this ladder, the wonderful, we love you and you're helping the cause type end. Okay, so we're at the bottom of the ladder.
Right.
The next step up is kind of the remake. Okay?
Or the clone, or the...
Well, they're all clones. Yeah. This is the clone scale, okay?
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so the remake and this doesn't necessarily have to be done by the same person, but it could be. A lot of times remakes are done by the same people. But, I mean, it can be done by somebody else, and this is where our Fortress Craft games fall into. You just take the other idea, and you pretty much re-implement it. There's a lot overlap with the blatant ripoffs, but you're not at the IP lawsuit level, or at least you're far enough away where it's like, you're grasping at straws. The Fortress Craft clones that we have, none of them are so bad that it's like, okay, that's obviously a lawsuit needs to happen, okay? It's not like they called themselves, Minecraft in the same font and put it on there. They have a lot of freaking overlap, and, it's like, oh, it's not creepers, it's zombies. But, there's some stuff offered to the clone. There's a couple block types, hey, we played this way or something, or we focus on that.
Yeah, they took some element and they focused on polishing it up. Like, Fortress Craft was graphics.
It kind of focused on some graphics and things like that. They go off there. So, I mean, these are still not morally loved, but they're not, I don't really want to say they're reprehensible, okay?
No.
Because they lead into... They're easy targets, but they lead into the next rung up, which is the adaptation clone, okay? So this is where I put Captain Dubstep. I've decided upon Captain Dubstep as a Metroid clone. That's what I want this game to be, with my dubstep time manipulation features.
Yeah.
Okay? So this is the Hollywood pitch of it's Braid meets Metroid, right? This is where I am taking gameplay mechanics and I'm setting a baseline of one game, and then I'm going to pick this little thing off and iterate into that. And this, I think, is actually, it's not as awesome when you have a lot of new systems going in, further up the line, but it is a good place for indies to be at, okay?
Right.
Because I can, and I have been, sitting down and picking apart, why do I like Metroid? What makes Metroid work? What's important in the level design about Metroid? I'm just absorbing Metroid. And then I'm going to absorb Metroidvania games on top of that and go, okay, Metroid was the canonical example, and now it became this Metroidvania thing because of these other, later Castlevania games that I didn't actually play, but I need to go play now.
Yeah.
And basically go like, okay, let me understand this genetic sequence of games so that when I sit down, I understand what's happening in the Metroidvania space. When I go make my Metroidvania game, I can decide on what I think's working and what I think's not. And I think it's a really good space for indies to be because it's still keeping the scale relatively small. I still have a tight blueprint. It's Metroid, right? So if I don't know what to do in a situation, I do what Metroid did, When I sit down, it's like, well, how should the player start? How did the player start in Metroid? Okay, do that. Until I have a reason to change that, until like, oh, my gameplay doesn't fit that, take what Metroid did and do it.
What?
Smiler wants me to punch him.
Why?
I don't know.
What is, I'm curious, what part? Is he thinking that's still dastardly and evil? I also think there is...
You can't get away from that.
At this end, at this phase on the clone scale, is really important to game development because this is where our evolutions have become. We've talked about on the show in the past that if you were to take Tetris and the next major puzzle game behind Tetris is pretty much Bejeweled. The next by storm capture the world is Bejeweled. Okay? It would not work for you to launch Tetris and then launch Bejeweled. Okay? Because people like patterns they recognize.
Yeah. But
they have to change slightly. If they change too much is when people tell you your game is frustrating. I don't understand your controls. It's frustrating. This is our problem when we played Pigs with Wings. None of us had played Tiny Wings.
Yeah.
This pattern was way too different outside of our box. Now we're a little bit more into the ecosystem, so when we played the game this week, Rainbow Rapture,
I think it also
we were a little better.
Easier.
I think it was easier too, but we kind of had an idea. We had a frame of reference, okay? And the thing with the puzzle games is, like, you don't get from Tetris to Bejeweled without stopping at Dr. Mario in between.
No.
You have to have those evolutionary steps before you hit the next, oh god, killer breakthrough, here it is.
You're saying that's for the player, but also I think in the mind of the developer, you don't ever get, like, the adaptations are where you experiment with those concepts and tweak them until eventually everything just sort of clicks together.
Yes.
And you have
and you do. And I think this is where you get into what I would call into the next phase, where you're mechanic cloning now.
Yeah.
So you're not cloning a particular game, but you're borrowing the mechanics from several games, and it's a mashup now, and it's becoming very original. Sometimes you actually have to sit down and piece it apart to go, like, where does the inspiration really lie on this? You know, I mean, this could be like a Dead Space. I mean, Dead Space is obviously a first-person shooter, but Dead Space borrows heavily a lot from System Shock. But that's not apparent. Like, you can't say, like, the blueprint for Dead Space was System Shock, but they definitely, you know, like, evolved the horror shooter genre, and go into it.
I mean, System Shock was more an RPG than a straight first-person shooter, whereas Dead Space is not, but, you know.
Exactly, but, like, the mechanic
You're right.
was taken out of System Shock. Mechanics were taken out of tons of other games, you know, and put together. And added some real novel mechanics in the process, you know, where they, like, dismemberment is a thing in Dead Space. Right. You have to dismember the enemies. You cannot just shoot them down. We've had headshots before be really important, but we've not really focused on dismembering people, you know? So it's evolving that, you know, and then that's getting in there. And then there are the crazy things that are, there's one more step that very few game developers ever hit. And that's the Miyamoto level, that's the Jonathan Blow level, that's the guys, that's the Tim Burtons of the game design world that just come at things at such batshit angle. Like, they're not wired up normal. They see things differently. So when you get their game, you know, it's so out of context from anything else going on that, you know, they evoke all the games as art discussions, or they define a new genre.
You mentioned Miyamoto, and I think it was probably somewhat easier to do that then than it is now, because, you know, we've had quite a bit more history. It still happens, but gaming has come a long way.
It is. I mean, for a guy to sit down and go, this is a platformer. I have defined a platformer now, you know? And granted, there was an evolution of Mario Brothers to Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
That you can kind of start to see some of these things, but, I know him because I think he did it even beyond what was going on at the time. Even beyond, like, you know, hey, I'm the guy that made Defender. It's like, no, like, Legend of Zelda and, like, what's happening in that game and, you know, like, multiple dungeons and spread out and world maps and, like, he doesn't have Legend of Zelda to look at and go, okay, yeah, that's kind of how you should do a world map. That works really well.
Even, how many I'm trying to think of what platformers there were before Super Mario Brothers. Surely it wasn't the first platformer. Like,
no, I mean, if you want to go first platformers, I think you gotta go back to Atari 2600 and, like, Pitfall.
Yeah.
And those kind of things.
Would you count Qbert as a platformer?
Qbert falls in, it's like the middle step. It's the Dr. Mario from, you know, getting to a platformer, and it's the same as, the other one we just mentioned, Mario Brothers, the original Mario Brothers. Of, like, it's a single screen game. You're kind of jumping around on. Like, it's just begging to be scrolled. Like, scroll, and, you know, we have something.
Well, you mentioned, too, though, how many games he worked on. So, I mean, part of being that prolific, I think, is, like I said, that middle space between a straight-up remake and an evolution is getting in there and playing with the concepts until, you know,
exactly.
the right connections is clicking.
And I think it's important to know you can't just jump in at the high end.
Right.
You can't just say, like, I'm going to mash them. It's not going to work for you.
Well, you
haven't learned why these games have worked. And the only real way I think you're going to learn on those is to start in at the lower end of the pool. And, you know, don't do a blatant ripoff. Don't do the lowest end of the blatant ripoff. And keep your remakes, you know, among your friends, and don't distribute those. But once you start doing a little bit more than a remake, you know, once you start getting into the Braid meets Metroid, you know, once you start like, I'm going to take this game and pattern my game off of it and add my cool, awesome mechanic to it, start, you know, getting out, because now you need feedback from gamers. At that point, your friends and fellow developers aren't good feedback for you, because now you need to start to understand
what people like.
And that's hard to learn, even by people that are successful at it. You know, like, I don't think Will Wright can sit down and tell you what people like.
No. I
think people like what Will Wright likes, you know, and it just worked out for him. And he's like, he's probably like, I don't know, I'm fascinated by this stuff, and so are other people. Holy shit, it made me a billionaire, you know? It's crazy.
You kind of have to focus.
And he's another one that would put in that list. Although, Will Wright had Mule, so I don't know, like, before there was SimCity, there was Mule, which is kind of the earliest, after our conversation about Tiny Tower and all of that, like, I started going back into the genetic history of that, and it kind of seems to originate around Mule, as far as being the first, like, resource management, based game with an economy simulator going on and things like that. And you know what? As I was checking it out and trying to figure out what the fuck was going on, because it's not like the interface was beautiful or anything. Right. It's just one of those that, like, shocks you of, like, the depth of this thing and the time it came out, you know, like, boggles the mind. Like, this would be killer. Update the graphics and release it on iOS. In fact, I need to go look to see if somebody has. And it would be a killer game. It would be as interesting as any Farmville today. Yeah. More.
Well, the thing with SimCity is it has the resource management, but it also does a lot of different things. Like, its issue is, you know, proximity and connections between different buildings and stuff like that. Which I've never played Mule. I don't know.
Yeah. So Mule, I mean, you buy mules, and then you train them to harvest or to get this type of mineral or do that, and you own area, but you are playing against other players, so that you're trying to encroach upon their territory and things like that. So basically, like, Mule is like a generic unit that you then train to be specialized and figuring out on what your economy needs.
I think one thing that's interesting about the bottom part of your scale, though, I think the difference between straight up rip-off and the remake, and a lot of times it's subjective. It depends upon the person making it. Like, if you have the industry clout and you have the ability to do something better than a remake, then it's probably a rip-off. If you're just getting there, it's probably a remake.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of games that was popping up was some Street Fighter remake or something that somebody did. If on the top indie games list, and it was popping up in a lot of lists. So I haven't played it. Obviously, it's a remake. They're calling it a remake, so it's pretty faithful to the original.
Wait, was it Streets of Rage?
Or maybe it was Streets of Rage,
I remember seeing that, but I don't remember seeing it.
Streets of Rage remake.
2 would be tough to...
So Streets of Rage remake. So it's called a remake, but obviously they added some stuff to it and really polished it up, and, you know, at the level of homage instead of ripoff. And
at that point,
it's still at that level on the clone scale.
Yeah.
But it's kind of done with some respect.
Well, and they can't make money off of it.
No, and they're giving it away, and they're not trying to make money off of it, so that also factors in to whether or not you get goodwill at that level. And that's how it's kind of like, you know, like, that's another way to do that. Like, give it away, call it a remake, make it a homage, play for free. You know, you're really, at that level, what you get as a developer is the experience of completing a game.
Yes.
You know, like, okay, I don't have to think about the design. I'm just going to focus on the technical. I need to learn how to program. I need to learn how to draw art assets. I need to learn how to work with a sprite sheet, memory constraints. I need to get all of that done. It's a really good place to start, and down there. And
if it's a game you really like, then yeah, it is. You're not doing it to, for yourself, to make money off of it. But I think it's a question of rip-off is kind of derogatory because you want to tear people down. And that makes sense if, they're the powerful. If you're doing that to people who aren't powerful, then you're just a jerk.
Some of them we've seen on indie games, I'm meaning not to tear them down. I'm meaning rip-off in the sense of you actually should be sued. I think somebody should file a lawsuit.
Yeah.
This is despicable and disgusting. You stole their art. You stole,
Okay, yeah, if you're stealing actual art assets, then that's a whole other issue.
I mean, rip-off is bad. I mean, clone it could be good.
What's funny, though, is, when John and Charlie were doing the games, they kept saying, it seems like a cash-in attempt. And the funny thing about rip-offs, especially on Xbox Live Indie games, but, bad rip-offs, no one's cashing anything in. They may think that's what they're doing, but...
Smilertoon in chat mentioned the bad, horrible graphics, and then he pointed out Will Wright and Raid on Bungling Bay. I think it might be Will Wright's first game, definitely early in his career.
Yeah, well, that was the thing that kind of led into SimCity.
Yes. Will Wright said he had more fun with the level editor in Bungling Bay than actually playing Bungling Bay. Which, that's a sign your game sucks, alright? If you have more fun with the level editor than the game, you probably want to work on the game design some. That's a hint. That's a red flag. But at the same token, he dived in, I don't think many developers would then say, I want to release my level editor as a game. It's really what SimCity 1.0 was. He had to do it himself. The studio he was at, Borderbund, I think, was who put out Raid on Bungling Bay. They were not interested. They were like, you can't, whatever. This game flopped, and you want to release this
They weren't the ones that published SimCity first, were they?
No, I think that was Max's. I think it was his own company, and it was Max's.
Okay.
So he had to go do it on his own. Nobody was interested in publishing SimCity at the end. It's one of those great stories like Monopoly. Like the woman who went to Monopoly, went to Parker Brothers, and said, hey, I got this game. She was a PhD in economics and wanted this game just to basically teach some fundamentals of economics. I think it's really great. They're like, what the fuck? We do Parcheesi, people can't comprehend that. She figured out how to make a game, she marketed the game, and then 30 years later, Parker Brothers is buying all the rights to Monopoly and all that because it's the biggest game ever at the moment. It also helped that it was released in the Depression. And people got to own Boardwalk in the Depression, so it was topical. That's just one of those great stories. So, I think that's what I wanted to say. I think I got out, that's my point on clones are not bad. I do subscribe to the theory that all games at some level are clones. They're all building upon previous art, works of art.
Very little original.
But so are movies, so are books, so are, it's that guy's Vimeo channel. Everything is a mashup.
Well, and I think we're kind of in a culture that expects everything to be new, or at least to be perceived as new. Whereas,
but there's newness in the combination.
There is newness in the combination. Well, but it's a kind of thing that it's very easy to pull out the term ripoff just because.
And as much as people tell you
to that.
As much as people tell you they want new, they line up to fucking buy Call of Duty. Alright?
That is true. I think the difference in Call of Duty is, Call of Duty is perceived as being is it EA or Activision? I can't even remember
who cares anymore?
It's the property of that developer. If someone else goes out there and clones, but then, you have Call of Duty and Battlefield together, and,
Not to mention the Modern Warfare.
Call of Duty did not invent the shooter genre. But, I've said this before, if you go back to something like folk music, and you look at the kind of culture that grew up around that, like, that was expected. It was expected that you're going to take, lyrics and stuff like that from other people, arrangements. It's just, I think part of rip-off being such a dirty word is a product of
Well,
culture.
I think in games, more than other media,
yeah,
the rip-offs have been blatant. I mean, the rip-offs are at a different
Definitely.
level.
They are.
Where you go and you're like, you listen to that song and
It's a remix.
it's like, man,
It's
that's
Puff
the hook from Vanilla Ice's hook is the hook from Queen, right?
Yes.
But that's not as bad as, like, they pay to do a cover and they call it a cover. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm covering this other band. I'm giving all property. I'm paying some royalty to the other band, and I'm telling you that I really like them so much, and I'm going to put them on my album and
Yeah.
do that. But many times when they cover a song,
They do something different.
they do something different, and they kind of take it up at that, like, I'm going to do the acoustic version, or something, of that nature. And usually the straight covers are reserved for concert only. Most of the straight covers of ours. So I think games, and just
Well, you
because
don't
it's such
have
a new
anything
medium, because, I mean,
that
music has been around
parallels it.
forever, all these other mediums have been around for long, that they probably outgrew this phase. And we're still
Yes.
shedding off that phase of the shyster level, and it's like, okay, I'm just gonna copy-paste your
Well, you
work.
have to understand things like movies and music and books came out of an age where, you couldn't just create it once and then, copy it everywhere. So they could probably get away with it a little bit more because people didn't have the internet back then and go, oh yes, I recognize that. I downloaded that off BitTorrent the other day.
Yeah, no. But yeah, again, I think inherently beyond the IP infringement level, nothing wrong with clones. If people get in your face about it, ignore it. Don't listen to other developers who think that it's not an artistically pure endeavor. Don't focus on that. You'll get there because we've said on the podcast before, people that come up to me and they say, I just have no ideas for game dev. Bullshit. Start writing a game, and you'll have so many fucking ideas, you'll have no idea what to do with them.
And there are different types of evolution.
I got 4 games started right now. I got code to 4 different games
exactly
started.
But there are different types of evolution because even if you're building a clone, there are things you can polish up and tighten up about the original formula, and then there are also new combinations and mechanics. So I think both move the craft forward. And I think a lot of it is subjective. Like when you start out building what you think is just kind of a remake adaptation, it may be more of an evolution than you think it is. It may be more of a ripoff than you think it is. It's kind of hard to judge until you get into it and until you see the finished
But I
product.
think if you get into it, even if you get into it at the remake level,
Yeah.
you might have the idea now that you're in it to go take it up to the next level of
Yeah.
this plus this.
There may be things you can add and tweak.
And you'll have that moment of, that eureka moment will come because you started building it, not because
Yes.
you stood at a distance and looked at it, externally. So take that away. Like, that's actually really good creative advice. That's a weight a lot of people bear of, like, if I sit down to write something, people do this with blog posts all the time. I can't blog anything. You said this. I can't blog anything that hasn't already been blogged.
Yes.
Well, guess what? You're not going to sing anything that hasn't already been sung. You're not going to draw anything that hasn't already been drawn. You're not going to write a game that hasn't already been done. Nothing you do hasn't already been done. So
Yes.
therefore, who cares? Sit down and do it. Get it up there, and over time,
And sometimes you are
the
playing...
process of doing it, it sort of becomes your own thing. You figure out what you want to do, what you don't want to do, what you like doing, how you like doing it, and all of a sudden you look back and
Even
somebody
if
goes
it's
like,
just
"Oh, you've
twiddling
got like
the
a
knob.
Dylan style. Like, look at this. Like, I like Dylan's blog because he writes it this way."
Yeah, and I think even if you're not making major changes, you're still kind of like, making minor changes. I was about to say something and I completely lost it.
We do need to get...
yeah, we need to get into new releases.
New releases of the week for the last week.
Of the year.
Of ever.
But...
No more Xbox Live.
This means when we talk about the games we play, in the future it will no longer be like, it's time for... because we will play the good stuff instead of...
We might play some stuff and bring it up incidentally.
Play all the things!
It's time for our new releases of the week. If you're listening to this on the Xbox Live Indies New Releases podcast, which is an excerpt from the GameMarx podcast. The GameMarx podcast is the full podcast. Of course, we'll leave the episodes up, and they will be there, but there will be no more releases going forward. We at GameMarx are going into development, and to make time to do other things, we have to cut time from somewhere else. If we had time... we would probably still write reviews, on games, but, priorities and time, what it is, it's not, so this will be the last Xbox Live, new releases podcast from us. If somebody is willing to pick this up,
more power to you.
Contact us.
I was gonna say, I think there are several people who, several other podcasts that do.
There are some other podcasts out there that do.
Blogs and things like that.
Our first one up this week is Starzl Seasons, and this is Starzl. It's the little pet with the new puzzles. It is new puzzles. It is a whole new edition
with hats. So it's like Team Fortress
and basically a Christmas theme put on top of it. But it's still the puzzle of moving your little star guy around the screen.
Collect all the stars.
And collect all the stars and use the other guy to kind of create a block because he
can't pick up stars.
He doesn't stop. So he only stops when he hits a wall. So you just kind of have to figure out the pattern to move through. It's an okay puzzle game. It's not a bad puzzle game. It's not going to suck anybody in. I think that wasn't looking for something like this, but for somebody that's looking for kind of a interesting puzzle game, it kind of gets interesting. You got to start thinking some moves in advance once you start getting into the higher levels of like, how am I going to get this particular star, or the order that you take the stars in matters, because once you go down this one path, you really can't get back out.
It is kind of the casual puzzle game where, you've got all these disconnected puzzles and you're trying to earn all 3 stars on all of them.
Angry Birds theory.
Yeah, Angry Birds theory. So you can get by with less than...
Which I'm actually into right now.
Well, because she finally owns a device that can play Angry Birds.
Wait,
my iPad.
Because Angry Birds said, "Fuck your droid." They said
it played on my iPad.
So how come you didn't ever play it?
I did. I'm just redoing some of them.
So what are you playing it on now?
My iPhone.
Nom Noms is our next game up, and I guess this is a Lemmings game.
That's the thing I want to compare it to.
But it was crazy complex, and the tutorial was going on forever, and
I don't like the controls either.
The controls were weird, and there was no part of this game that felt comfortable, and I just kind of like at the end of like the 6-7 minutes was like, I'm not feeling it, man. I'm not with you here. The controls and the UI are so broken, I don't want to go on.
I think part of the problem was...
And it might be an interesting game underneath, and the graphics look decent.
Part of the problem, though, was you're controlling this very large character, but that's not the point. You're trying to herd these smaller nom-noms around. Yes, everything is lolcat.
You has a flavor.
But it's hard to see because of the scale is kind of built for the main character. And the side-scrolling thing gets kind of weird because the first, like the tutorial level, you're supposed to open a gate, but it's not immediately obvious that it's a gate.
Right. And then I'm like, aren't I supposed to get into the exit or something? Like, okay, I just open gates, or is that what I do? And
it's kind of an RTS because you're building stuff, and I'm like, what's
going
on here?
It's a good place where you go back, play the first levels of Lemmings. Go get the original Lemmings and play the first couple of levels of Lemmings and see how they eased you into. Because Lemmings got complex too. Mm-hmm. Lemmings had like 10 different types of Lemmings by the time you got up and going.
Yeah.
But you didn't get there in a while.
Well, you just have to find a way of a scale that works so that what happens to little followers matters.
Next one, Merry Match 3 Christmas.
I didn't really notice that it was that stuff in the background that you're trying to get away with the match 3.
Yeah, so it's a match 3 game, but you need to at least clear every tile once to move on to the next level.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that at first, and then I was like, oh, it's one of these. Oh, fun.
But yeah, there's match 3. Levix. Lexiv. We did video on this one. This one is, Scrabble meets SimCity.
Pretty much.
And it's not as complex on the SimCity side of it, it seems. It seems to run itself automatically, or at least from the trial, you're more focused on making words than city management. But it's an interesting idea. I don't know that it works.
I don't know, there seem to be a lot of, like, there's a money aspect you get in addition to the tiles. There's a couple different sub-menus that they don't really have time to take you through in the tutorial, in the 8-minute trial.
And I kept activating and not activating certain special moves. I'm like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
I hate you, and then I had lag.
Oh yeah, I don't know what the deal was with the lag. I don't think I ran into that when I played it. I don't remember it, at least.
I did hit the lag as well. Echo Space. I don't understand, and we got 2 of these this week, and we've had these before, what the appeal is on this control scheme. So this is a move the ship with one stick, move a target reticle with the other stick. It's not a dual-stick shooter. You're not pointing in the direction. You are physically controlling 2 ships at once, one of which is where the main ship is shooting toward, and it doesn't work well for me. Like, I don't get the appeal of this.
I think, and this is almost something I think they should have added as an option. It feels like the weapons should move with the ship, because trying to move both of them at the same time is confusing.
And none of the games do that. They all leave them in the same place. So, I mean, there's some subculture out there that's digging this, because these keep coming back.
There's probably a source, like some element that they're cloning, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I don't know what it is either. And I'm not a fan of it. I'm use dual-stick shooting. If it moved with it, maybe I'd give it an interesting shot. That was kind of in shoot one up. You're expanding and contracting the fleet. Kind of worked that way as far as like moving with it. Not exactly the same mechanic, but that was an instance that I thought worked pretty well. But yeah. Absolute Firepower. We did video of this. This is a dual-stick shooter on a scrolling world map. You go along, you flip levers to unlock next sections of the map or something to go in and blow up. Let's check it out. Say if it says 1 player. This really seems like this needs to be local co-op. I mean, it
really feels like it would be. It's the type of game that you kind of expect. The overhead dual stick. Yeah, I guess it is technically kind of a dual stick shooter, but I liked it. We talk about this in the video. Like, it plays well. It feels pretty balanced. It's just the scale, and it's kind of funny that I say this after Nom Noms, but the scale, it seems like there's too much going on screen. Like, it needs to be zoomed in a bit.
You are Goldilocks. The scale is too big for me.
Well, no.
The scale is too small.
No. It's the same problem.
This scale is just right.
It's the same problem Nom Noms had. There's like too much going on, and it's hard to focus in sometimes.
Next up is Santa's Sleigh Ride. Whatever. Push the button, Santa goes up, drop presents in the thing.
When you aim the presents, why does it invert? Did you notice that? Like, if you want to throw a present forward, you have to press back on the thumbstick.
I didn't try that.
Didn't even notice that, no. I didn't even figure that out. Like, I tried moving the thumbstick around, I guess it went out the back, and I didn't notice.
Well, there was that arrow when you moved the thumbstick.
Didn't see it.
I think I played this game for 20 seconds. I'm going to be honest.
Okay.
Ramen Ninja. Did video on this one. Cute game, I will say. basically a ninja sneaking around, collect the 3 ramen bowls, and then get out the level. And it's kind of a simplified Metal Gear Solid sneaking game. Run around. Cute story. The Udon Corporation has taken your ramen from the ramen fields. Ramen grows in fields, by the way. Didn't know if you know
plants.
that. On plants. On giant stalks. It looks like it grows in the packaging.
Not on trees, not in patties.
Looks like it's in the packaging, too, when it's picked.
Well, it's the bricks.
Yes, ramen naturally grows in the brick form. Genetic manipulation gets it into the cup form, I think.
Boiling water.
Yeah, so if you want the natural ramen, it's brick form. That's the organic ramen.
Did this have some Naruto references?
What?
Am I missing that? Or is that like the ninja that eats ramen that runs
All
with
ninjas eat ramen. It doesn't matter which one you're on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Inuyasha eats ramen.
If you're Japanese, you eat fucking ramen, apparently.
Well, yeah. Apparently,
Harrison Ford eats ramen in Blade Runner. So, it's just universal.
Any ninja runs. I don't know. I just figured there was... That's why I asked.
Next one up is Orb Tower Defense. We didn't do video on this one. We had 2 tower defense games. I think of the 2 tower defense games, neither of which were impressive, but I think I like this one better. We didn't do video of it because it would be a pretty boring video. And the reason I say that is they do tower defense, and they do a proper tower defense of different units are affected differently by different guns, but instead of disguising the system's very transparent. Blue guns on blue units, green guns on green units, yellow guns on yellow units, red guns on...
Blue is water.
They call it water, plant, but they didn't, like, style it.
Fire actually looks kind of like fire.
That's the only one that wasn't a dot shooting across. Well, no, obviously when you upgraded it,
like, it's the standard RPG weakness.
It is.
Chart.
And that's the mechanic you want, but you want to disguise it in terms of, lasers work well on the archers or, on the tanks, and this works well on this type of unit. You know what I mean? And give me something to figure out. I had nothing to figure out here for strategy. I never lost a unit the first time I got in playing, and that's because it was just transparent on the strategy. If I had to figure out that use the plant type on the tanks, to slow them down the best and destroy them, and then the soldiers get fire and, whatever, robots get electric or something, then there's something interesting because I have to figure out what the pattern is.
I actually liked it because it was very tower defense noob friendly, and I don't play a lot of them, so it was like, okay, I can kind of relax and play this and not, like, worry that I'm going to lose. I think one of the things how they were countering that was the path changed every time. So you had to decide whether you were building up melee units or ranged units, and
You realize you could move your pieces every time, right?
You could move them?
Every single time.
I did not realize you could move them. I thought you had to sell them and
Nope.
move them. I missed that then.
Yes, you just select on them, you move them over, and you're done.
Oh, well, in that case... Wow, I feel...
I thought when it moved the first time that I was going to be able to move the units, and I'm like, oh no, this is interesting, because now, where I normally just stack all of my units at a corner piece, that's going to be bad, because then they're all going to be located in one spot, and when the track moves and it's no longer in that spot, I've wasted all my money. Yeah. I'm like, oh wait, I can move it over here to the other... Well then, there we go. And there's no penalty for moving.
They do change the predominant type of unit that gets sent out, but...
They do, so what I basically did is the first 4 units I built were one of each color, and then I just alternated which one got the upgrade.
Okay.
And that seemed to cover me for the most part. Because it wasn't like they were immune. No unit came through immune. It just whether or not they took 1, 2, or 3 shots. Do that. Next one up, End of Days Infected versus Mercs. Now this is a first-person deathmatch type server.
Yeah, online only.
Online only, so... And you need live for the online component, so 0 you can check out from it in the trial. You can move your guy and shoot some cardboard cutouts.
That pop up, kind of?
then that break if you don't follow the path exactly. At one point I decided, like, can I go up a ladder? Oh, look, I can go up a ladder. There's some sewers. So, because the goal was marked on the map, I quit following the path and I went over top of a building.
Goal was marked, it just wasn't laid out.
And then, none of the pop-ups popped up anymore. Like, because I didn't walk in the area from the right direction, it broke all of the pop-ups.
I went out of the suggested area. I went through a door, went through a building, came out the other side, went into an alleyway, and went through some gates, and suddenly I was in no man's land. There were no pop-ups for a good 3 minutes, so I went back to where I came from.
I will say, this is one of the best first-person shooters, best-looking first-person shooters, well, okay, most complete that I've seen on Xbox Live Video Games. Well, it's both. Like,
You keep downgrading it.
I'm not really downgrading it, because I'm trying to figure out the angle on it, because a lot of them, there's a lot of 3D games we've seen that just have really, it's like, I can do colored lighting, oh, let's turn that up so that it looks really like...
I think when we were talking about it earlier, I told you, it's like, to me,
it's stock.
Because it's not doing any real lighting or anything like that, it's just basic placed assets.
Yeah.
And they all look like Turbo Squid, go and download a zone and a map and you're done.
But it isn't like the painful type where it's like you can tell that they just gave no thought to how these all came together. And
which in Turbo Squid you can download a whole level.
Okay, well,
you can download an artist who's already made a city.
I'm saying there are a lot of games that don't. Like
right. No, that's true.
And so they had to give some thought to that. And also it's actually, it seems to be a pretty complete FPS as far as...
I mean, it's not, they may not have, I don't know anything for certain that they went and purchased 3D assets and stuck them together. It just has that feel because there's not the polish and integration of a 3D game. You know, really, it's a candidate of like, you need to check into the Sunburn because lighting and texture mapping does so much for the quality of your game.
But I think it's a good start. This is like, you know...
Well, a good start with no AI, no... Like, doing just a multiplayer deathmatch only is almost kind of a cop-out. Because it's like, oh, you got collision detection working, shooting, and you can render a 3D scene.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cop-out in that sense, but, I mean, like I said, I've seen a lot of this done poorly, and they have not.
App Pack 2.0, whatever.
I didn't even play it. It was apps.
Zombie Snowman. I played this one for like 20 seconds. Press the button on the snowman, he disappears.
I actually played this up to level 12, and I was like,
why?
What would actually... I don't know, because it was there. Like, there was nothing that was like, just keep pressing the buttons. I'm just, like, you're asking me to press buttons? Sure, I'll press more buttons. I finally just, like, do I have lives? Or if they catch me, do I die? Like, what's the mechanic there?
Next one is Rainbow Rapture. We did video on this one. This is a Tiny Wings, clone type game. And, we did video on it. We did much better, on this one than we did with When Pigs Fly.
Is this the same company that did,
It
Pigs
felt
Can't Fly?
kind of like it, but I don't think so.
They did Bumble Pig. And
I remember that one.
I don't recognize Hummer's Bash. It's from 2009.
Okay. That's interesting. They seem to have they've tweaked the formula. It's not...
It still feels like a game that should be played on a phone or on tablet, but it feels better being on the console. It's not something that I care for on the console, but it definitely is working all right. So I can see it doing pretty well. If you like a Tiny Wings type game, which is the dive mechanic, so you hold the button to dive and then let go as you swoop up the hill to get air and repeat the cycle, basically. Try to get a good rhythm with the hills and the flying and everything to do that. It adds, a couple power-ups here and there in the game that you can pick up to stretch it out. Next one up, Hack This Game 3. It's just like Hack This Game 2 and Hack This Game 1. And at this point, even though I played quite a bit of the demos of the other two, it's the same old type of questions, pattern matching, and what comes next in this thing, and I just wasn't in it for a third time.
Yeah. I mean, I think they give you 2 sample questions in the trial, and by that time you probably know if you like this or not.
Yeah.
It was like 2.5. You got to get the intro, and then you have the 2 other ones. And then on the 4th one, it just like, no, you need to buy the game. I'm like, of course I do, because I'd get through in 8 minutes.
Next one is Avatar Ball, and Japanese a lot in the thing. We did video on this one because actually this one surprised me when I kind of figured out what it was. It's a multiplayer, and the system will fill up with AI. You can play it with one person. Pick System Link instead of live connection to do this. It should just have like a single player mode. You play a ball that you have some loose control over. You pull your trigger to cause the ball to kind of like explode or get big really fast. And then you knock all the other player balls into the wall or against each other, and which takes some of their life. And you try to last the longest and hit the most people, and it just keeps a running score. And turned out to be kind of like the crazy insane that you don't really have control over, but it's kind of okay. You kind of just go with it. Like I really don't have control over what's going on.
Tell what's going on.
Yeah, many times you kind of get lost,
and
but
you got to figure out which ball you are first. It's like, I was purple, but it took me good 2-3 minutes to figure out which one I was.
We did video on this. Excuse me. We did video on this basically because I think, you really need to watch and check this game out. If you got a couple friends over, give it a try. Put it to the trial. Next one up, Avatar Climbing. And so this is the jump higher game. Not quite a doodle jump, but, I found the 3D perspective to be disconcerting and difficult to tell where the platforms actually were when I was trying to make my jumps.
I think we've lost video and sound.
No, it looks like it's gone. Keep rolling.
Well, I thought it was a neat idea that they have these 360-degree levels, but it didn't scroll much. Like, you have to get all the way to the edge to scroll around, and by that time, it can be really hard to see what's, around the bend.
No, I'm not seeing.
So there's really no point in,
right. So, next game that we have up is Takedown. We did video on Takedown. Takedown is tower defense, basically. It's basic. I mean, it doesn't do anything. And yes, you not interrupt the show. Finish the new releases. Fucking up the whole show. It's a podcast.
The streamcast.
Yeah, well, it's like, all right, let's run around and reset all the modems right in the middle of the show. That's gonna do great. Now we got all this extra content on here. So the Takedown, we did video on it. It's a little bit more challenging, in that it sends like massive waves, and I almost don't know if you can keep the first wave back on normal difficulty. Maybe you can. I haven't experimented too much with upgradings in the tower types, so it does get into that a little bit of like trying to figure out what the tower types do and are they useful, in what situations or combinations work. But it's the tower defense games that I like never actually have a set path. Okay, so like it's just a big giant map they're trying to get across, and your towers are actually also corralling the or maybe there's like one wall or something, and all the units will go around the wall and try to get in. And so basically you end up constructing this elaborate maze over time to figure out what's the maximum amount of damage I can do to them for screen space. So tower defense games like this that are on a set path, I'm less interested in.
It just becomes a game like put stuff around the corners or something.
Last game this week is Ascension, and it is another control 2 sticks, move the target, move the ship separately, Was it this one or the other one? This one was just a target, wasn't it? This one was not the...
I don't know. This actually came out like really late last night after I'd finished playing the game.
Yes, this one was move the target. The other one had like a beam between you that you could kind of use to kill things, but didn't work all that well. This one had the thing, and the same thing. Like, I don't know. This mechanic's not working for me at all. Both of these games look graphically okay.
Echo Space, I think... It's not quite there. Like I said, it's still awkward, but it's not a bad idea. If this is just targeting, I don't know. I want to say, I guess it hasn't been really done before, but it feels less of kind of this new crazy idea if it's a
Maybe
target.
there's a reason it hasn't been done before.
Because it's confusing.
It's confusing. A few more steps before we get there. Well, that wraps up the new releases for the week. Our last time that we do this.
Yep.
What is our game of the week?
We did video of... Let's see... Takedown?
Takedown.
Avatar Ball.
Avatar Ball. Rainbow Rapture. None of those. Ramen Ninja. Absolute Firepower.
Echo Space.
Lexiv.
No, we didn't do.
Lexiv. And that's what we did video on. None of those are jumping out at me. I think I would say Rainbow Rapture, Avatar Ball, Ramen Ninja. Maybe Absolute Firepower.
I would probably say my first choice actually was Lexiv, only because I thought it was a cool idea.
That's why I said Avatar Ball. Idea, not...
Yeah. I think Avatar Ball was much less polished. And, like, I like, playing it, I didn't even know the trigger did anything, so I didn't figure it out. Aside from that, I would say probably Absolute Firepower and, I guess maybe Rainbow Rapture.
Cicely?
Rainbow, Ramen, and that one.
Absolute Firepower?
Ramen Ninja was pretty good, too.
I think, okay, if we narrow it down to Ramen and Absolute Firepower, I think Absolute Firepower I would edge to the win. And it's a very close, like, neither one of them are, like, no game this week is grabbing me of like, you know, like,
Yeah.
this is great. There's a lot of little tweaks and improvements to Ramen Ninja and to Absolute Firepower, I think, would make them great games.
I kind of have both. I have that same reaction to both of them. A little less towards Ramen Ninja because I don't, like, that's not really my type of game, whereas Absolute Firepower is.
Yeah, I think Absolute Firepower I lean on more. So I guess it really doesn't matter what she says at this point. We've already got 2 votes, and nobody's strongly fighting for...
Either.
Your opinion is valuable to us.
Please don't.
You're just going to patronize her. So congratulations, Absolute Firepower. Room 4 Games is the developer. GameMarx Game of the Week. It looks like it's their first game up on the service. So congratulations. Everybody else, if you're able to watch the video, yay. If not, doesn't matter because we're going to end it anyway, and you can't hear me talking, so who cares? We're going to be back in a week, and next week will be the GameMarx Game of the Year Awards. So set your calendars now. Make sure you get, good seats for the awards show. Come out early, photograph on the red carpet. We definitely have some big plans behind, like, producing some good content video, that will go up of them and, keeping with the ethos of when we covered the games our goal was to cover them in the style of a larger site. So I think we need to do like some of the larger site do, and here's the videos of our reviews along with. I don't know if we blog. We might just take our comments and blog up our personal top 10s.
I mean, it would make sense.
It would make sense. We'll have the content anyway.
The copy written.
So let's do that. All right, everyone. Let's do this again in a week.